Nato is a miserable, lonely loser who was constantly bullied all his worthless life. However, everything changed when one of his bullies was a Giat, and he secretly started to like it. He meets her at the library when he accidentally pushes his bag off the table, pouring out its contents. A girl sees this and tries to help him with it, but suddenly finds some of his drawings and picks them up before he can stop her. She gives them to the other girls, and they begin to mock him, embarrassing him. The girls soon take their leave, but one of them stays behind and sits in front of him. She tells him she is a first-year student, grinning mischievously, and calls him a senior because he is in his second year, but he is too timid to talk. She then reads out some panels in the manga he is drawing, which involves a knight saving a warrior girl after they have been ambushed. She asks him if the character in the manga is intended to represent him, but he stutters in shame. She then shows him a scene in the manga where the main character is rizzing up his crush and asks that they act it out, surprising him. She instantly unleashes a jujitsu move, acting her part in the manga, and after that, she backs him so he can act his part too, but the weakest idiot can't summon enough courage to do it. She immediately snaps at him and calls him a loser, saying he can never be like the MC of his manga. She starts bullying him so much that he begins to avoid eye contact with her, and she calls him creepy, immediately secreting tears in his eyes. She laughs at this and gives him her hand towel to clean his tears. Afterward, she takes her leave, leaving him feeling like a failure, ashamed that a first-year girl made his stupid ass cry. He stays up throughout that night sulking on his bed as the girl's voice won't just leave his head. The next day at school, as he is about to enter the art room, his bully appears again, and he timidly returns her towel before heading into the room. However, as he settles down to start drawing, thinking that he is already free from her, she barges in and continues to be his worst nightmare. She notices him drawing an object and immediately grabs a chair to sit before him, offering to model for him while he draws her instead. He declines her offer, but she threatens to show him the size of her plot if he doesn't draw her, making him uncomfortable. So he instantly agrees because he is a good boy who is too pure to behold a girl's melons. As he prepares to draw her, he becomes too shy to look at her because he has never stared at a girl head-on in his life before, and he stalls for a moment. She promises to give him a reward if he draws her but refuses to tell him what it is, so he starts to draw her anyway, even though he doesn't want whatever the heck she wants to give him. After a while, he finishes drawing her, and she decides to give him the reward she promised. She instructs him to close his eyes, and then grabs his chin, pretending to want to kiss him. So the idiot shoots out his mouth, thinking he is about to win a jackpot, but she hit his lips and mocks him, asking how a bit of male expects to be kissed. She tells him his crappy drawing doesn't deserve a reward and continues to ridicule him so much that he starts to cry like a child. He soon heads home, but unfortunately, she passes the same route, and after a while of him trying to avoid her, she stops him and asks them to go out together, shocking him, but she immediately hits him and tells him she is just joking. She begins another session of mockery and hits him again, flinging him off into a nearby pond. However, he gets out and just continues going home, prompting her to ask him if he ever gets angry. He instantly has a flashback to when he was always bullied since he was young and reasons that he has already developed enough resistance against it. He then tells her she pisses him off, but he doesn't hate it that much because he's getting the chance to talk to her, as he has been lonely all through his miserable life. He asks for her name, and she calls herself Nagatoro. The next day, while Nato draws in the art room, Nagatoro appears hula-hooping around him and asks him what he thinks of her hip motions. She tells him to come in and find the right moment to slide in. So he immediately bends down to find an entry point, but he sees her pants and loses his composure, making her embarrassed and calling him a perv. Later, he eats alone in the art room, and after finishing his meal, he brings out a shonen manga that contains sus images and fantasizes as he begins to read it. However, Nagatoro suddenly appears, startling him. She offers him food, and he tries giving her the food he got her too, but she is disappointed and asks if this is what his broke ass can afford. She immediately begins to tease, telling him she saw him looking sus early and asks him if he was watching porn. He quickly tries to hide the book, but she catches him and takes the manga from him. She finds a scene where the MC gropes a girl's plot and teases him by asking if he would like to grab her own too, embarrassing him. Feeling awkward, he tells her he only bought the manga because of the plot, which is about vampires, instantly interesting her. She reads the manga and tells him she loves vampire stuff while recounting the events in the manga. She then says he resembles one of the characters in the manga that was isekai'd by a vampire. But she immediately adds that he can't be attacked by a vampire since he is still pure since no girl wants him. He asks her how she is so sure since she has to be a vampire to know, and she immediately begins to act creepy and pretends to be a vampire that wants to suck red juice from his neck, terrifying him. She soon leaps on him and almost bites his neck, but he repels her immediately, using his terrible breath as a weapon. He then gets up and tries to flee, but she knocks him down again and accidentally places her hand on his magnum, almost causing him to climax. Later on their way home, she teases him with what happened earlier and asks him if she should squeeze it again, embarrassing him. She heads home afterward, and the next day, she appears again to disturb him. She suggests that they play a game where they have to poke each other's buds. He initially refuses, but she offers a do-whatever-you-say ticket as a reward, so he accepts to play the game, thinking he would just use the ticket to tell her to stop disturbing him if he wins. She goes first and effortlessly pokes his buds, but at his turn, just when bro thinks he is about to be the luckiest boy in anime history, she becomes embarrassed and pushes him away, making an excuse that she has to meet her friends. Some hours later, he goes to work on his manga at the restaurant so he can be free from the midget stalking him. But Nagatoro suddenly comes into the restaurant with her friend and two other ugly guys, and he immediately hides himself from being noticed. The two creepy-looking guys with no eyes start to talk with the girls, but Nagatoro isn't feeling them and just continues to suck on her juice. A few moments later, one of the guys and the other girl leave, leaving Nagatoro and the other guy by the table. The guy, who happens to be an upcoming artist, gives her his new release to listen to, but Nagatoro isn't impressed. When Nado thinks she will be goofy with the guy just as she does to him, she just calmly tells him he should look for a more promising career and quit this crap he calls music.
Emotional, damn it!
The guy leaves in embarrassment, and the uglier guy arrives. He tries to raise her up with the new pickup lines he learned from ChatGPT, but she tells him his face can't even pick up any girl, bashing his ego, and he leaves for the bathroom immediately. Later on his way home, Nado, still shocked by Nagatoro's responses, wonders if he is the only one she toys with, and while he thinks about this, she appears and starts troubling his lowly life again. The following day, Nagatoro appears again while Nado draws and asks if she should model for him, but he quickly avoids her and tells her he prefers drawing still lifes to disgusting girls. She feels embarrassed a bit and then offers to remove her plot armor so he can clearly see her plot even without his glasses. She immediately pulls off her skirt and unbuttons her uniform, but Nado quickly looks away to keep his eyes from beholding evil. However, she tells him she was just trying to show him her swimsuit and calls him a loser for thinking she was going to show him her plot. Later in the evening, while they head home, it starts raining, and they manage to run to a shed. They sit down, backing each other, and as Nado turns to look at her, she pushes his face, telling him that her uniform is now see-through right. He becomes embarrassed and imagines how her body will look, but he instantly remembers she had teased him with it earlier when she showed him her swimsuit, so he thinks she is trying to do the same thing this time. He suddenly turns and looks at her, but is shocked to see the outline of her plot armor, making both of them embarrassed. However, she soon resumes teasing him, calling him lucky to have a glimpse of a female's plot for the first time in his life. The wind becomes heavier and the weather colder, so he stands up to leave before it gets more terrible, as his house is pretty far away. However, she invites him over to her place since it's close by, and as soon as he enters her house, he sees some shoes by the door, which he assumes belongs to her parents. He immediately becomes terrified, as he imagines that her parents would be creepy bullies just like her. However, she snaps him out of it and tells him her family won't be back till late at night. She gives him the clothes to change into and suggests they play Mortal Kombat. As soon as they begin playing, he starts destroying her, making her feel bad. He reasons that he can use this to get back at her for all the bullying, but as he almost beats her again, she distracts him. She continues to distract him in the succeeding fights, turning the fights in her favor. After a while, he prepares to go home, and before leaving, he tells her he enjoyed the game. During the lunch break at school the next day, he grabs his food and heads to the dining hall, but he finds out all the seats have already been occupied by a bunch of creeps with no eyes.
Emotional, damn it!
While he wonders where to sit, Nagatoro suddenly calls him, asking him to come sit with her and her friends. Noda reasons that this is the worst spot to sit, but because there is no other space, he decides to sit there. However, he plans to rush his food and get his ass out of there as quickly as possible. As he takes his seat, Nagatoro's friends begin to mock him immediately, and Nagatoro joins them too. They start to call him names, with Nagatoro playing with his hair, but as one of the girls attempts to touch him, Nagatoro hits off her hand and tells her his hair is too messy to be played with. They continue to make fun of the dumbass, and the same girl tries to hit him again, but Nagatoro holds her hand. Seeing this, the other girl decides to pull Nagatoro's tail by saying Nato isn't a man since he can't fight back, and should rather be called a bug, pissing her off. Nagatoro snaps at her, telling her that's going too far, and the ugly girl teases her that she is defending her boyfriend. Nato is surprised that Nagatoro is angry on his behalf, and he decides to man up. He suddenly stands to his feet, calling everyone's attention and tries speaking up, but the loser loses his confidence and puts his ugly ass back down. The girls wonder what the heck he was trying to do and laugh at him for being such a sissy. Afterward, Nagatoro asks him why he can't fight for himself, but he just remains silent with low self-esteem. She then decides to teach him how to fight back by hitting anyone who tries to bully him. But dude is too cracked to even fight back. She tells him to go hard on her, and she starts mocking him to provoke him, but he only feels bad and almost begins to cry like an idiot. She sees this and continues bullying him still, annoying him and causing him to hit her. But bro accidentally hits her on her melons, embarrassing both of them. She commends his effort but teases him by asking if he missed his hit on purpose so his filthy hands can feel her plot. Following that, Nato goes to wash his hands, and while at it, he thinks about how oil painting gets his hands dirty every time. Nagatoro suddenly appears and starts to wash her hands. She starts to tease him again and tells him the way they are washing their hands is like they are bathing together before developing the plot, making him feel awkward, wondering how a girl can be so loose. She grabs his hand and starts rubbing hers against it while calling him daddy, making him embarrassed, so he runs off. Later in the art room, while he eats his snacks, Nagatoro's two creepy friends suddenly appear. He tells them their friend is not currently there, but they sit down in front of him nonetheless. He wonders what these bitches, who are not aware of how ugly they are as anime characters, are looking for even when he has already told them that Nagatoro was not there. They begin to tease him, and one of them suddenly asks if he has squeezed melons before, making him embarrassed. They start to pester him with the question, demanding to know if he has ever been that lucky and offering to have him squeeze theirs for free. He becomes very uncomfortable as this is too much for his pure mind, so he tries to escape, but they catch him before he can. They lock the door, and one of them forces him to grab her balloons, immediately making him feel that they have successfully violated his innocent hands. However, the girl suddenly pulls out some bean buns from her plot region and tells him what he grabbed were not her melons but the bean buns. They start to laugh at him again, but Nagatoro suddenly appears and they scurry away like rabbits, remaining both of them in the art room. Nagatoro feels jealous that he grabbed a plot that is not hers and asks him how it felt, but he quickly clarifies that it was bean buns, immediately changing her countenance, and she begins to make fun of him. She asks if he would like to have a feel of hers and immediately brings out a bean bun, which is said to be of premium quality and softer compared to other ones. She asks him to play with her and puts the bean buns in her plot region, the premium on one side and the lesser quality on the other side. She then asks him to feel the texture of the buns in her plot and tell which one is the premium, shocking him. He initially refuses, but she urges him to try it since it's just buns anyway. So he puts his hand to good use and starts to squeeze to find out which one is premium while he closes his eyes. However, the bean bun suddenly falls from Nagatoro's plot, and unbeknownst to Nato, he grabs it and starts to have the best time of his life, almost making her climax. He soon realizes that the buns have fallen off, and she whips the shit out of him. The next day, Nagatoro comes to meet him in the art room again and offers to model for him instead of the useless still lifes he keeps drawing. He initially declines but agrees to draw her the next day. However, the next day, she delays coming, and just when he thinks she is not showing up, she suddenly appears with a sofa. She then sits down to pose, but she starts to make sus poses, which makes Nato nervous, but he maintains his composure like an alpha male, as he prepares his long pencil and attempts to show her his talent in making strokes. She reveals a part of her thighs, and he goes tomato red immediately. After a while of struggling to draw anything since he can't maintain focus, she sleeps off, and he starts to draw her until he comes up with a nice drawing. But he isn't totally satisfied with it, and feels Nagatoro will mock him because he made a ton of mistakes. She suddenly appears behind him and offers to reward him for the drawing, so she tells him to close her eyes again. She then places a soft toy on his lips, surprising him. But when the cultured idiot brings out his tongue to plunge deeper, he realizes it's a toy and not her lips, shocking him. She then tells him he is a million years away from being able to kiss her. Afterward, she looks at the drawing and tells him she likes it. Later that same evening, Nagatoro dreamed that she went to bully Naoto as usual, but he didn't give her any response. Then her two friends suddenly entered and praised him instead of insulting her as she did. They asked him if he wasn't tired of her bullshit, and if he would like to come along with them, to which he replied yes, making her mad as they left the art room. Waking up from this dream, she sees that Naoto has covered her with a sheet, and she praises him instead of pulling up her creepy behavior as usual. A few moments later, she suddenly brings up the fact that he is too sensitive because he is still pure, and then she mimics how weirdly he would react if she tickles him. He replies that he wouldn't do that, and she challenges him on it. He immediately tries to flee, but she catches him and begins to tickle him, causing him to react weirdly as she had predicted. He feels ashamed that he gave in so easily, but he immediately challenges her too. She tells him she isn't ticklish, and adds that it's not like he can tickle a girl anyway since he is still untouched, but he suddenly cuts her, saying he has no problem with doing it. She dares him to put his hand in her.
What do you mean by that?
But the dumb skull decides to go in slow-mo, as he slowly approaches her with his finger. She becomes embarrassed and removes her armpit, but blames it on him, saying he is giving her a dirty look. Later, she shows him the footage of a sheep being sheared. She suddenly notices his full hair and offers to do the same for him since his broke ass can't afford a decent haircut. She brings out a comb and a pair of scissors, and tells him she trims her brother's hair sometimes, so he reluctantly agrees, as she prepares to give him a head service. She receives a call from her friends, who ask her to come to the classroom to get her notes urgently. She leaves immediately, telling him she will be back, and while she is away, Nagatoro's friends suddenly appear. They had deceived Nagatoro into leaving the art room. They find the haircutter Nagatoro brought out earlier and threaten to shave his hair. He tries to resist them, but one holds his head in place just below her huge balloons, as the other attempts to go Saitama mode on his hair. However, Nagatoro suddenly returns since she doesn't see anyone in the classroom, and upon seeing her, her friends become scared and run off immediately. Nagatoro then proceeds to trim his hair. A couple of hours later, on their way home, Nagatoro feels exhausted because of the hot weather, and she suggests that they get some shaved ice, which Naoto reluctantly agrees to, even though he had suggested getting ice cream from a convenience store instead. They join a long poo, and while they wait for their turn, Naoto notices some creepy dudes staring at Nagatoro's backside, so he quickly blocks them. He soon sees her zoning out due to dehydration and quickly drags her away to get her some water. After drinking, she becomes energized again, and Naoto asks if they should head back to the queue, but she tells him she has given up on that and goes to get some ice cream from the convenience store. They continue their journey home, and since the summer break starts the next day, Naoto feels cool since he will be free from her disturbance for a while. Nagatoro suddenly requests to have a taste of his tea. She drinks from it and returns the bottle to him. She then asks them to exchange contacts, and he tells her he doesn't mind but tells her his lonely ass is already used to being left on read. She adds his contact to her favorites and tells him if she ever gets any sense that he is thinking something sus, she will send him a sticker calling him a perv. She soon separates from him, and as he continues heading home, he suddenly remembers that she drank from his bottle, so his stupid face decides to drink from it so his lips can touch hers. However, he suddenly receives a load of pervy stickers in his DM. He turns around and sees Nagatoro behind him, and she starts to tease him again. Following that, Naoto is woken up by a strange lady in a hoodie, and he looks around, wondering where the heck he is. This feels like Nirvana, and as he thinks of his miserable life has finally ended, free from all his struggles, the strange lady tells him that he has been chosen as the savior of the world. He is tasked with the responsibility of defeating the Demon Lord. He replies that he is only a weakling with no superpowers like Spider-Man, so she gives him a staff and tells him to be like Gandalf, instead before pushing him off from the sky. He starts to fall and soon almost hits the ground, and as he wonders what to do, the staff with him suddenly glows, causing him to defy gravity as he gently hits the ground. However, he is suddenly attacked by a monster crocodile, and he runs for his life. He soon hides behind a tree and manages to unleash a lightning attack with his magical staff, but it doesn't affect the monster. The monster destroys the tree and almost isekais him, But Nagatoro suddenly appears out of who knows where and saves his ass. He is surprised to see she looks like a cat, and after she drags him off, saying they still have to defeat the Demon Lord. They partner together in destroying all the lowly monsters that come their way, but they soon come across a more formidable enemy, a dragon. Nagatoro charges at it at full speed while dodging all the fiery attacks from the demon. She almost lands a strike, but it blocks her attack and then unleashes a massive inferno. Nodo quickly jumps in and shields Nagatoro and himself from being destroyed by the fire. Nagatoro charges at it again while Nodo supports her with his magic, which eventually leads to their victory. She returns to him excitedly and pecks him for supporting, embarrassing him. One of Nagatoro's friends, Gamo, suddenly appears. It happens that she had been turned into the dragon they had just defeated by the Demon Lord. The other one, Yoshi, also appears after hatching like a chick, and they all proceed to face the Demon Lord. However, upon reaching there, the three girls suddenly become the Demon Lords, and he realizes he had been fooled all the while, and that the kiss was just part of the plan to deceive him, as his ugly, disgusting face is unworthy of a kiss. He tries to attack him, but they soon overwhelm him, and while they violate his fundamental human rights, he wakes up from his dream. He realizes his weak ass is in a restaurant sipping juice, and he cannot even play the MC role he just saw in his dream anyway. Nagatoro appears immediately, but he isn't ready for her bullshit this afternoon, so he stands up to leave. She finds his drawing on the table where he had drawn her before the dream, and she goes teasing him again. The next day, Nagatoro invites him over to join her and her friends to have some fun on the beach. But at the beach, Dude just sits with a pencil and a sketch pad while the girls engage in swimming. Nagatoro soon notices he is alone and goes to disturb him again. She tells him to come and swim too, but he replies that he doesn't like the pain he feels from sunburn. So she brings out the sunscreen and offers to rub it on his body. He refuses, saying it's what only couples do, but she pushes him to the ground and starts rubbing her cream on his body. The other girls suddenly join and add more cream until the sunscreen is used up. They then force him into the ocean and bully him throughout their time there, but he secretly likes it. Later in the night, Nagatoro calls him to ask if he experienced any sunburn, and he tells her no, thanks to all the cream she rubbed on him. Meanwhile, there is a drawing before him, which he made of her while they were at the beach. Some days later, while Naruto walks across his street, he sees some kids dressed in yukata and realizes that it is a summer festival. He immediately imagines Nagatoro inviting and feels terrible at the thought of it. However, he returns home, and while he plays games, he keeps checking his phone, expecting Nagatoro's message, but he isn't getting any, so he wonders if he should invite her instead. However, he immediately ditches that thought when he thinks of how she will mock his useless ass again. He later decides to go alone, and while he looks around, wondering what he came here to do anyway, someone taps him, only for him to turn back and discover it's Nagatoro's friends. He immediately tries to escape, but they catch him and start to tease him, telling him they are surprised to see a lonely, shy dweeb like him at the festival, and asking him if he came in the hope that he was gonna bump into Nagatoro. They inform him that she is busy with the swim club practice, shocking him, and so he tries to take his leave, but they stop him and fix a dog collar around his neck. Meanwhile, Nagatoro finishes her club's practice, and her friend asks him if she will go to the festival, to which she replies that she doesn't know. However, she suddenly receives a picture on her phone seeing Naruto with her friends, and she immediately becomes jealous. She runs off immediately, and on getting there, she tells them to give him to her, but they refuse. Gamo tells her she will have to fight for him if she wants to have him, and she immediately accepts the challenge even though she caps that she doesn't give a shit about Naruto anyway. They head to a shooting gallery to compete, and while at it, Nagatoro tells Naruto that she didn't know he had a thing for festivals, but he replies that he just wanted to get some fresh air. She immediately realizes that he had come because of her and teases him about it, asking if he was expecting her to invite him to the festival. She then tells him that whenever he wants to go somewhere with someone, he could always try asking them. They engage in several more games, and Nagatoro manages to win Naruto back. Gamo and Yoshi leave, and the two continue to tour the festival. She teases him that this looks like a date, making him embarrassed, and just when she asks him to hold her hands, they are interrupted by fireworks queue. She immediately pushes him to go and watch the fireworks together, but they end up in a long line of queue. Naruto remembers that he used to watch the fireworks from a secret location when he was much younger, and his broke family could not afford the ticket. He immediately grabs her hand and runs to the place, but on their way, Nagatoro calls him pervy for dragging her to a sus dark place. They soon reach the place, and as she continues to tease him, the fireworks explode, surprising her. However, she keeps teasing him, and he tries to pull an Uno reverse card on her to make her embarrassed but fails because he stutters just too much. They suddenly see some cultured losers kissing all around them and immediately run off before they start to feel so too. Later, when they return home, Nando remembers the advice Nagaroto gave him earlier and summons the courage to ask her to come again with him the following year. She agrees and suggests they wear matching yukata, making him embarrassed, but she immediately tells him she was just joking. A couple of weeks later, when school resumes, he suddenly sees Nagatoro and her friends gisting somewhere around school and quickly hides behind a tree before they notice him. Some dudes join them, and he feels jealous, wishing that he could pull a James Bond on girls too, but that is not suitable for his MC role. One of them asks Nagatoro if she would like to hang out sometime, but she refuses and calls him ugly. He continues to ask her and casually puts his hand around her neck, making Nado, who is still watching, really jealous. He tries to comfort his girl, but his dumbass flops again and quickly hide, like a creep battling low self-esteem. However, they call him over, and as he approaches them, he stutters again like a fool, telling Nagatoro that they should go. The dudes start to mock him, but Nagatoro gets the message and stands up, replying that they should go home. She leaves with him immediately, and the other girls follow since they were already bored of those two useless wastes of space anyway. However, his going home that day is met with a lot of mockery from the girls. The next day in the art room, Nagatoro mocks him for being as skinny as a twig, and he feels terrible. She tells him he just needs to do some strength training and he will be like Goku, but the idiot replies that this will cause a lot of pain, making her wonder what sort of loser this is. He tells her he might be if there is any exercise that wouldn't involve moving. She replies that she knows of one and tells him to get on all fours, which he reluctantly does. She then sits on his back and tells him to hold her for as long as possible, as this is a compound exercise that trains his back, core, and triceps. She sits properly on his back as he begins to shiver, but some girls suddenly see them as they walk past the art room, making both of them embarrassed. A few moments later, he feels exhausted as he sits before his canvas because he has been short of sleep due to staying up to play games. Nagatoro notices this and asks him if he has been studying hard, prompting him to ask why she is asking. She tells him that the midterms are in 4 days, shocking him. She then tells him if he continues to play games, he might just repeat his class, but Bro isn't bothered, saying it'd be fun to repeat the extracurricular activities anyway. However, Nagatoro starts to taunt him with the fact that this means he will be in the same class as her, which will give her the opportunity to bully him every time. He then unconsciously spills that it won't be boring since she would be around him, shocking her before smacking his head and calling him a fool for thinking like that. Following that, he begins to study hard, but Nagatoro and his friends start to mock him as he does. They tell him he might repeat twice or thrice, which will make them his seniors, and they will push him around like a slave. However, Sakura appears and tells Naoto not to worry about that as the girls have also been failing in school and are most likely to repeat too. Some days later, Naoto manages to pass his tests, but this only makes Nagatoro sad because she won't have the chance to bully him like she wants. A couple of hours later, as Nagatoro approaches the art room after school, she hears some naughty noises coming from there and quickly opens the door to see what's happening, only to find out that her friends are trying to pull out a splinter from his finger, which entered while he helped one of them carry her chair. She immediately grabs the tweezers from them and removes the damn thing like a pro. Later on their way home, she tells Nando he must be a very nice guy to help girls carry heavy things, and he tells her that simping is his hobby. She tells him to carry her bag, but he refuses. Then she suggests that they play rock, paper, scissors, and whoever loses carries the bag of the winner for 1/3 of the journey. They play the first round, and he wins, causing her to carry his bag. She is pissed that it didn't work in her favor, and Nado feels terrible for making a girl carry his load. So the next round, he deliberately loses to avoid this. However, Nagatoro's bag is heavy as hell, and he wishes he didn't lose. In the third round, he drops the Mr. Nice Guy bullshit and is determined to win, but unfortunately she wins. As he plans to continue carrying her bag, she immediately jumps on his back and tells him he is carrying her this time. He struggles as he continues walking, and after a while, she almost loses his grip on her, so he readjusts and mistakenly grabs her cakes, embarrassing her. She immediately jumps off his back and runs the opposite way, making him wonder if she is mad at him. Later that night, he is disturbed as he does his homework, expecting to receive a message from her. He soon gets a message from her asking him what he is doing alone in his room and wondering if he is playing games again with his joystick. He tells her he is doing his homework, so she asks him to guess what she is doing. She calls him and tells him she is having her bath, immediately making him flustered as his naughty mind imagines her plot. She laughs at him and toggles the video call on unknowingly, causing him to experience what only fan subscribers enjoy. He informs her, and she immediately goes all red. A few moments later, while she thinks he has seen her plot in 4K, he apologizes and tells her he only saw it in 360p. A week later, while Naoto draws in the art room, Nagatoro starts to practice some of Mike Tyson's moves since she has been watching a lot of boxing matches. Naoto regrets lending the Ippo show, and she immediately begins to throw dabs at him, asking him to spar with her. He tells her he doesn't box, but she says she will stop before her fists hit him. She continues to throw punches at him, pushing backward until he almost falls, but he quickly falls forward and hugs her, shocking her. Nagatoro narrates to her friends, calling him a perv, but they become interested in sparring with him too, so they can give him a feel of their balloons. Nagatoro objects to this, but they don't listen to the heck she has to say, so she immediately runs to the art room to tell Naoto to hide, because some girls are coming to violate his rights as a man. Later that afternoon, Naoto returns from class, hoping to have some alone time in his art room, but he is shocked to find the bunch of ugly bitches trespassing on his personal space. He asks them why they are meeting in his club room, and they inform him that a bunch of beta males were disturbing them in the dining room where they usually meet, so they decided to come to the art room instead. Naoto calls them cowards for chickening out so easily when they could have stood up against them. However, they tell him they came up with a better idea of how to dissolve their group. They had sent the girl with the biggest plot among them, Sakura, to seduce each of them so they could begin to fight over her, which should implode the group within a week. Nagatoro states that they can pull this off thanks to the inability of men to resist their hormonal urges. However, Gamo says Naoto is different and calls him a limptic, who doesn't go after women, but Nagatoro objects, saying he is sus like every other guy that watches recaps. Gamo doesn't agree, so Nagatoro challenges her that she would search the art room, and if she finds any naughty book, she wins. The challenge begins, and Nagatoro searches the art room thoroughly but doesn't find any book. Meanwhile, Naoto reasons that even though he indeed has a naughty magazine, he has already hidden it away in the prep room next door. The sim sneaks out, brings back the book, and puts it on a shelf where she easily finds it. Following that, Sakura comes into the art room to complain that she is being stalked as she presses her chest against him, making Nagatoro jealous instantly. She later explains it's an ugly fatso whom she had seduced among the guys earlier that wouldn't let her be. She asks Naoto to pretend to be her boyfriend so as to wade the fat guy off, shocking him and Nagatoro. The other girls urge him to do it, but Nagatoro, being jealous, suddenly objects and says making Naoto Sakura's boyfriend will only add another stalker to the list. However, he tells them he won't do such a thing and agrees to pretend as her boyfriend, making Nagatoro go all nuts. The next day, Naoto and Sakura meet up for a fake date so they can wade the stalker off. Meanwhile, the other girls follow behind, capturing the whole event, but Nagatoro isn't pleased with the whole arrangement. As the acting continues, she suddenly catches the guy and exposes him, shocking Gamo and Yoshi, who tell her that this was not part of the plan. The stupid stalker apologizes and runs off immediately, and Nagatoro tells them that they can now stop the fake boyfriend crap. The other girls leave unhappy, and Nagatoro heads home with Naoto. A few days later, Naoto participates in a marathon with his classmates, and after running for a while and beating his mates, he becomes exhausted and starts to run like an idiot until his classmates catch up and run past him. Nagatoro sees this and goes to meet him after, asking what the hell he was doing back there. The dude tells her it's not his area of talent, and even though she tries to encourage him to train to become better, he tells her he is good at nothing else other than drawing. She becomes pissed and tells him that they are starting a secret marathon training the next day. The following day, the weak loser meets her and blushes as soon as he sees her in her sportswear. They soon start running, but as they run, all Bro can see is her dancing cakes. He becomes embarrassed and increases his pace, but she increases her speed too, causing him to use all his strength to keep up. He soon gets exhausted halfway and says he can't go further, but Nagatoro doesn't allow him. She starts to insult and mock his weak bones, provoking him so he gets on his toes and continues running to prove he is not weak. After the run, they move on to other exercises, but they become embarrassed when Yoshik catches them in a sus position. The following day, Naoto begins to think of what to do for the art club in preparation for the upcoming school's culture festival. He wonders who to use as a model for his drawing and considers speaking to the art club president. Nagatoro appears in that instant, and suspecting that he needs someone to model for him, she offers to do it, but he declines her offer and tells him he wants a guy instead because it is difficult drawing a girl in detail. However, Nagatoro brings out one of his naughty drawings of her, which he had drawn in detail, and starts to tease him until he agrees to draw her. But he gives a condition that she has to wear the same costume as seen in the drawing, shocking her. He feels confident that he just pulled a perfect strategy to make her change her mind, but she soon appears in the same costume, shocking him. He reluctantly agrees to draw her, and while he does, Nagatoro's creepy friends appear, and they all tease him together. Suddenly, Nagatoro hears some footsteps approaching, and realizing it's the art club president's, he quickly tells Nagatoro's friends to hide in the prep room. The art club president, Sana, appears and finds nylon wraps and snacks all over the table. She tells him she came to check how well he has been managing the art club since he was put in charge, and states that she has heard rumors about how the club room has turned into a meeting point. She walks over to his canvas to see what he has been doing and finds the drawing of Nagatoro, making her pissed. She then brings out the club termination form, threatening to shut down the club if he doesn't take it seriously. Naoto remains speechless since he is too dumb to defend himself, and Sana heads out, saying she is going to submit the form. However, before she steps out, Nagatoro comes out of her hiding and stops her. She then challenges her, saying she is selfish to think she can just come from nowhere any time to shut down the club, just because she is the president. She defends that Naoto has been taking the club seriously, but Sana tells him to prove it by making his exhibit separate from the Culture Festival's exhibition. He will have to compete against her, and if his exhibition has the highest votes, she won't shut down the club. He immediately becomes scared that he is taking the president all by himself, but Nagatoro taps him and tells him he can do it. Later that afternoon, Nagatoro and the others mock Sana, but Naoto tells them not to make fun of her because she is very talented, and his chance against her is absolutely zero. The girls tell him he could always make a trashy exhibit for the club while he puts his best on his own, but Naoto replies that they have no idea what Sana is capable of. He informs them that the art club took the 6th position in the school's ranking the previous year thanks to Sana's infamous art. He goes to bring out the art and shows them, and they become dumbfounded by how great it is. Sana had done a portrait of herself in her creation state, and seeing this, Nagatoro teases him that he's been hiding this naughty image from them all the while, making him embarrassed. However, Nagatoro offers to model for him, but the dude still doubts that he can match up against such talent. Gamo suddenly shades Nagatoro, saying it's because her plot size doesn't match up with Sana's own, but Naoto tells them that Nagatoro is also cute with her mini plot. Later that evening on their way home, Naoto practices some sketches of Nagatoro, but he continues to fear that he is not good enough. However, she promises to help him win whatever way she can. The next day, Naoto makes some sketches on his drawing paper while Nagatoro models for him in a cosplay costume, and after a while, she comes to check what he has been able to do. She realizes the concept is not so great, so she pulls off the costume, leaving just a wrapper around her body, but he is not still happy. The other girls appear and are surprised to see Nagatoro almost uncensored. They tease her about this, but Nagatoro suddenly says he doesn't want to do this, and when Nagatoro tries to motivate him, he tells her he will draw on his own from now on. He adds that if he gets her involved and loses horribly, it will humiliate her too. She tells him she is not bothered, but he suddenly snaps at her and says this is between him and Sana. Nagatoro becomes pissed, and she takes her leave. The next day, Naoto arrives at the art room and discovers that Sana has demarcated their spaces. He quickly sets up his canvas and starts painting the useless still life he has always done since he is lonely and has no friends who can model for him. Sana suddenly appears looking sus, and he wonders why she is dressed like that. She tells him it's because she is trying to get pictures for her model. She then brings her huge melons close to his face to observe his art and tells him it's crap. She tells him the most important element the audience wants to see in a drawing is love, and as she further explains, Nagatoro suddenly peeps in. She becomes shocked upon seeing Sana dressed in sus clothing, and with her big plot pointed at Naoto. But before Naoto can explain that Sana is not modeling for him, She leaves angrily. He chases her immediately while remembering all the nice moments they have had together. And after chasing her around the entire school, he finally catches up with her by a pool and begs her to model for him. However, she suddenly slips and almost falls into the pool. But he quickly catches her. She asks him why, and he drops some rise lines exclusive to those who watch the real anime, causing both of them to fall into the pool. They soon come out, and she happily begins to splash water on him. A few days later, Naoto completes some paintings of Nagatoro and shows it to her and her friends. They compliment them and ask what theme he would give them. He then calls it a day in the life of Nagatoro. A few moments later, the girls wonder what Sana came up with and decide to go and check so they can compare it with Naoto's painting, but Naoto chooses not to go because he fears how horrible his paintings might become after seeing Sana's own. The girls soon return feeling terrible after seeing the masterpiece their opponent produced, and they wonder if Nagatoro should also strip herself for him. On the day of the cultural festival, Nagatoro and her friends appear in mascot costumes and start to display before the students so they can get attention and get them to vote for Naoto's exhibition. Meanwhile, Sana's painting appears to be lewd, exposing her naked body, and everyone wonders if this is even allowed in a school. Naoto observes that Sana's exhibition is getting more traffic, but he is surprised that his own is also doing pretty well than he expected thanks to Nagatoro and her friends who are telling people about it. Later, Nagatoro and Naoto go to grab lunch, but when they return, they surprisingly find a crowd gathered at Sana's exhibition room and wonder what's happening. They soon realize that the Student Disciplinary Committee has flagged Sana's exhibition because it's against the moral order. However, she stands on the fact that an artist has the right to freedom of expression with their paintings. Hearing the Student Council president bans her from ever displaying her piece during the Culture Festival. Naoto suddenly enters at this moment and defends Sana's talent, made him realize that what he desired to draw is Nagatoro, immediately making Nagatoro embarrassed. She then enters the Student Council room and compliments Sana's piece too, but the council president says that's just her opinion. So Yoshi also enters to do the same, shocking her. Afterward, Sana is pardoned, but she is given some conditions, and she meets Naoto and others to thank them for their support. She finally tears the club termination form and says she will terminate the termination process, exciting them. Afterward, Sana goes to have a look at Naoto's painting, and she comments that even though they look clumsy at some points, they contain a definite passion and are mixed with love, making Naoto embarrassed as Nagatoro teases him about it. They suddenly hear an announcement asking everyone to come for the closing concert, so Yoshit and Gamo come over to calm them, and Nagatoro drags Naoto along with her as they all run for the hall. The next day, Naoto sketches Nagatoro again, like he had always done, but this time, she decides to give him a real kiss as a reward before running off. It's a pity that's all his ugly ass could get after all the bullies he's gotten from her. The end. If you have reached this far, comment plot, and if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.